Thank you very much for the introduction here. And maybe people might be concerned by this title. In vivo, in vitro, in silico is definitely what we are discussing today. The dream, nightmare, or safely progressing a reality. Those are the different elements that I would like to discuss today. I'm Thierry Marchal. I'm the Secretary General of the Avicena Alliance that I will introduce a little bit later. Also acting as a program director for the healthcare solution at Ansys and e-health expert to the European Commission. And related to this title, why should we change? Well, when you look at that, we've been doing healthcare innovation for the last 1,000 years. We were increasing dramatically the healthcare. The life now is much better than before. So why changing? Why coming with all this kind of new technology? And some of you may be surprised by the name of Avicena, which is not an acronym, it's not a marketing name. It's the name of one person who was living about 1,000 years ago in the what is today Iraq. And he was writing the Book of Healing and the Canon of Medicine. And he was postulating that even rare disease have a cause. And therefore, he was conducting trial with control and treatment group. That sounds very similar to what we are doing today. So, well, we have a lot of experience for that. Why do we need to change for that? Well, the reason is quite obvious. And a reason that you can, all of you, see every day when you are going to the hospital, when you are buying some medicine, or when you are visiting the doctor. The cost of healthcare is increasing dramatically, nearly exponentially. And you see at the bottom this graph coming directly from the FDA showing that the number of drugs that you can bring to the market for $1 billion is less than one. That means that today you need to spend 10 to 15 years and spend $2.5 billion to bring a new molecule, a new drug to the market. That's simply unsustainable. That's why we need to change. Some people were showing me that indeed, when we are thinking about this kind of clinical trial, which is a reference for everybody in healthcare today, is great. But there is a difference between what we can do and the entire population. The fact that when we are doing a clinical trial, we are typically working with maybe a couple of thousand, 3,000 patients. At the best scenario, 30,000 patients, 40,000 patients, like what we have done for COVID. This is still a model of the entire population. And in this model, that means that we will test new treatment, which are not been approved on real patients, which is always risky and it can raise some ethical questions. Other challenge that we are facing is that typically, when we are taking this kind of sample of 2,000-3,000 patients, they are underrepresented population. Children, patients with rare disease, typically women, minorities, and all this kind of people. And on top of that, the cost of getting a clinical trial is increasing. Not mentioning COVID. COVID was showing us that waiting for 10 to 15 years before getting a vaccine is simply not sustainable. We need to change that. So it's not just about money. It's all the other things. The fact that we are asking for more safety and therefore we need to increase regulation. We are facing the challenge to give a global access to healthcare. All of us are seeing that the population is aging with the need to have more solutions for chronic disease. And obviously, all of us, although we are not in the same room, we know that we are different. This is leading to a lot of challenge, and therefore, these challenges are calling for innovation. It is calling for change. This is nothing new. As you can see from the past, people were already thinking that the one-size-fits-all don't work anymore. We need to go to personalized medicine. Typically what Jan Ertwig was explaining to you with Doc VIT. We have seen that for the last few years, even before COVID, companies will start to move from in vitro, in vivo toward in silico. Interesting, this kind of movement toward in silico, but what about in silico? Is this a dream or is that a nightmare? And I guess that I will scare Jan by saying, okay, that's a nightmare. Look at that. That's a typical feedback that we are getting. Okay, yes, you are doing a lot of nice, colorful picture, We don't know whether this is working in every case. You are showing one result. And by the way, this is difficult. It's very difficult to find some expert able to run the simulation. It is quite time consuming and it is very expensive to start doing this kind of thing. Those are typical pushback that we are hearing. And rather than answering them, we need to listen to that and being open mind, because those pushback are very valid. But there's also some information, like the fact that we are not doing some nice, colorful picture. That's the easy way. You need to create some meaningful output and therefore interact with all the end user. It could be the patient, the clinician, and so on. It's very important to continuously validate the model that we are doing. We are not trying to create some nice, colorful picture. We are trying to reproduce what's going on in the reality. We need to develop more model. And here I'm calling for academics to make sure that they're developing this model and they transfer this model, for example, in the Cube platform in such a way that this could directly impact the people and that we are continuously validating this aspect. Difficulty and the lack of expert is an obvious thing. Right now, if you are an industrial company, you are begging to try to find someone with some training in CFD, structural analysis, electromagnetic modeling, and so on. This is another call to our academic friend. We need more biomedical engineers fully trained to this element. But also, that's an illustration of what the CADFEM Medical is doing to simplify the interface, but at the same time to make sure that this is perfectly validated. Time-consuming is a reality, but the solver are improving, and now it's quite often possible to have some quasi-instantaneous result. Not mentioning that, indeed, the fact to do simulation could be much faster than doing this kind of experimental element. And expensive, it is indeed a reality that there is nothing for free, but this is more a kind of investment. And I can tell you that the return on investment is huge. So I'm not trying to push back on all these elements. I'm just trying to listen to them and to make sure that we are finding some feedback. Because clearly, many others, and I'm part of it, are saying, okay, but this kind of in-situ approach is a dream. And we can say many reasons for that. There is no risk for the patient because we are talking about virtual patient. We can have access to a lot of data. We can change parameters and have a rapid investigation, testing many scenarios, investigating some extreme case and so on. At the same time, I will say, okay, let's stay humble. Let's not be too enthusiastic for that, because let's think about this kind of nightmare over there. We need to deliver some real result. We need to validate that. So that's why this kind of in-situ approach is clearly a safely progressing reality. We are changing the world. This is a true revolution. And when we are doing a revolution, it's not possible to do it alone. So that's why with a few key members, including from academic people and industry people, we created the Avicina Alliance a few years ago, 5 years ago, which is truly a global organization, meaning involving academic, involving industry, but also a regulator for pharma, for software, for medical device. It could be for small company and large company. With one key goal is to make sure that we can accelerate this kind of medical innovation. We need to make sure that we will have a safe, affordable, and cost-efficient healthcare. Well, we can suggest that many people are saying that. The particularity of the Avicina Alliance is what is bringing us together today, this kind of in-situ approach, and we are the only organization in order to focus exclusively on this kind of in-situ perspective. And just to say a couple of words about the Avicina Alliance, one of the key elements, because in the audience, there are many people coming from the academic world, many people coming from the industry world. Well, in the Avicina Alliance, we've got 50% of the members which are academic and 50% coming from the industry by status. And for that, if you are interested by what we are doing over there, don't hesitate to contact the manager, both at Avicina and VPHI, in order to get more information and to find out how to join over there. We have already quite a few partners and members here. You can see VPHI, and under the VPH Institute, there are about 600 academic members over there, but also several industry members. We are joining force in order to make sure that our voice will be heard in different elements. But the question is not just to have this kind of academic and industry people together. One of the key elements is that we need to work with the partners And as you can see, those are some very prestigious partners, because if all of us are willing to work for INSICO, but for example, the regulator, the authority, and so on, they don't care about that, we cannot make a lot of progress. So we are very proud to have this kind of memorandum of understanding signed with the FDA, working closely with the EMA, being created at the request of the European Commission, and have as a partner group like NDIC, the Medical Device Innovation Consortium, ASME, the DIN, the Dutch Standard Organization, German Standard Organization, who are guiding us to what we need to do. And for that, if we want to really achieve what we are willing to do, we can see three major challenges in front of us. First is that we need to do a lot of work. And this is not free because we need to have some people. So we need to find some funding. And at the same time, we need to make sure that we have a tight collaboration between the industry and the academic. Second, we need to make sure that this kind of INSICO approach is not something that we are doing between us in terms of research between scientists. It's something which is formally recognized by the authority in such a way that we can accelerate the regulatory approval process. Third, it's very important that we are not just doing that in Europe and in North America, but everywhere across the world, because there is no point to make sure that we can accept digital evidence in Europe and in the US if you still need to do some clinical trial for China, for Japan, and so on. That's why we have created this kind of three working group with very clear mission. Professor Liz Garris, who will be speaking a little bit later today, is really making sure that first there is a tight connection between the industry and the academic, but also that she's bringing this kind of topics for getting some funding from the European Union. Emmanuel Voisin, who's the CEO of VCLS, is making sure that all these topics about INSICO is properly recognized by the authority, the European authority. But at the same time, that this kind of European authority is sharing with us some of the elements with us in order to make sure to put that into our agenda. And last, we are very honored to have Mark Palmer from Medtronic, who's driving this kind of international activity. The point to make sure that we are engaging with all the organizations, all the agencies around the world to make sure that this is becoming a reality across the world. But on top of that, I would like to say that we are working on different task forces. Avicina was going fast, and therefore it's important to touch and have some group talking together about different kind of topic of interest. I certainly don't have time, neither the intention to go through all of these task forces, but just want to show three of them, which are quite successful and giving you a flavor of what is done over there. If we want to make sure that digital evidence will be recognized, that you can certify your product only with regulatory approval process. One of the key challenges is to make sure that all the material that you are considering, whether the boundary condition, the geometry, the material properties, will be accepted by the authority. And you cannot go to the FDA by saying, okay, but I was using this kind of tissue characterization coming from this kind of article and publication. The FDA will tell you, okay, I want to see the certificate of birth of your material properties. That's what we are doing with this kind of tissue characterization task force, led by Venkat at Stryker and Professor Neil Famay from KU Leuven, just to make sure that we define the right protocol to measure the material properties and know what is the variability that we can see for all of them. This is one of the fundamental elements in order to make sure that this kind of INSICO clinical trial is becoming a reality. In the policy working group, let me mention this kind of notified body task force. Indeed, in Europe, to get a product approved, you need to get the approval of the notified body. The recent MDR is opening the door to this kind of INSICO approach. But we need to engage with the notified body to let them know about that, to educate or to inform them about what could be done and to be available to them, of course, without any kind of a conflict of interest. So what we are doing as part of this task force is to make sure that we can do in Europe in the near future what we can do today in North America with the FDA, especially for any kind of cardiovascular device, the fact that we can provide some digital evidence to get a product approved. And we are making very nice progress with a close interaction with different kind of notified body. And the last task force that I want to mention is this kind of global harmonization task force. We need to communicate. We need to inform agencies around the world about what is this kind of in silico method in a very humble way, because here we are not telling others what to do. But through this kind of Avicina Alliance, with the support of all these members, we have enough weight in order to go to this different group and telling them what could be done. And trust me, they are really amazed, because many of them were not realizing that we can go to this kind of level of detail, this kind of level of trust, and how fast we can go with this kind of in silico method. I would certainly recommend you to read the white paper that this Global Harmonization Task Force was publishing some time ago. Similarly, there is a very interesting document published by the notified body giving a map of who's who, what's going on, how to interact with the different notified body. And it's great to build this kind of vision. And the people who know me know that I like to spend an evening enjoying a nice glass of wine with a few friends, having a kind of great vision so that together we can rebuild the future. But these people who are knowing me know that the day after in the morning, I want to wake up quite early because I want to do the things. I want to make sure that indeed we are building this element. This is not just a vision. And so let me switch my hat and take my Ansys hat to say, okay, how can we make sure to support this vision of the Avicina Alliance and to make sure that this is becoming our reality here? For that, we've developed a kind of very ambitious program here, which will be changing the future. And of course, it will take years in order to make sure that this is happening. The first level of this program is to realize that we need collaboration. We cannot do that alone. So we need to work with this kind of academic, clinical, but also regulatory network to make sure that all together we are developing the right approach. The second step is to ensure this kind of digital transformation that we will be reviewing a little bit later. The fact that it is important to make sure that we are not just building a nice model, but all this nice model can be fed into a platform like the Q platform, and used by this platform and simplified model to have a real impact. Third, it's very important to create some kind of virtual organ. Why to do that? Many of you will say, okay, but anyone at in the academic world or in the industry will be able to use the software and to build this model. Not at all. Building a reliable, fully validated model of the heart, possibly patient-specific, is something extremely challenging, something which is taking quite a lot of time. So it's much better to join force, and this is another call for all our academic friends and other friends in order to make sure, okay, let's try to collaborate to make sure that this kind of digital twin of the heart, the brain, and other organ will become our reality in the future. Why to do that? Not just for the sake of creating some kind of virtual heart, but if we have this kind of virtual organ, the next level will be this kind of in silico clinical trial. That would be fantastic. And some of you may tell me that this has been done indeed and published at the European Parliament 3 years ago, that indeed it is possible to create a reliable model of the heart, getting it approved by the FDA, and therefore getting the new product approved much faster. But it is very important to make sure that this is becoming our routine. This is not a one case per year, but everybody is taking advantage of this kind of approach. If we want to push it a little bit further, we will realize that we can go to clinical application. And I know that there are a few doctors and clinicians in the audience right now. When they see all the power, all the beauty of what we can get out of simulation, they say, okay, I want to use it immediately. We have to make sure that this is fully validated, easy to use, instantaneous result, and accessible to this kind of people. And the holy grail in the future is this kind of personal digital avatar. Can you imagine a copy, not of a generic human being, but a copy of yourself, you, Jan, myself, all the other people, Lisa will be speaking later on, Michel Rochette as well, and all others, having a copy, a digital twin of ourselves in the cloud, in a very safely protected environment, connecting with us and being able to prevent any kind of disease, not being sick anymore. That would be a real dream. And of course, to support that, it's very important to have this kind of AI for health and digital twin. Well, along this line, as I say, going through all these elements. The first step, very important to be humble enough and to partners. And you can see the kind of partnership that we are building, and this is not an exhaustive list here, but working with hospital, working with a lot of academic, making sure that we are, of course, closely working with the regulatory authority, with many software partners, with industry partners, of course, with startups like a CADFEM Medical who can translate all the technology that we are developing and package it in such a way that it could be used by others. But also partnering with computational power partners, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and so on, in such a way that we have all the necessary computational power for that. That's a kind of open environment. And anyone of interest here, I would certainly welcome you to contact me. You will see my contact detail on the last slide, because we need to build that together. In terms of digitalization of healthcare, too often I can see people getting excited to build maybe this kind of a working skeleton. This is just one part, because we need to make sure that we can use that, not just like a kind of a nice, impressive, colorful picture, but something that can change the world. Making sure that this could be used by the clinician, and in which case, maybe Ansys discovery could be a key element. Making sure that we can run a lot of simulation, possibly on the Ansys cloud. Making sure that we have some environment that can be used for Ansys regulatory or clinician, like docu VIT that we've seen before that. And also moving to this kind of personal digital avatar where tool like a Twin Builder could be used, and that in a kind of Ansys Minerva environment. As you can see, this was our vision to say that we need to organize all the different elements in such a way that we can address the solution. The third element is this kind of virtual organ. As I said, well, it could be the lungs, it could be the heart, it could be the brain, it could be many of them. It's just very important that we are doing something detailed enough to answer the question of the element. And like he's saying continuously, my dear friend Michel Rochette will be talking later on, validate, validate, validate. Told to clinician, making sure that what we are doing is the reality. This is essential when we are developing, this kind of advanced model of the heart and understanding what's going on in this element. Despite the fact that we've got this kind of multi-physics approach with the fluid, the structure, and the electrophysiology, something that we need to put into the entire cardiovascular system. But, you know, that's a lot of work that certainly we are driving on our end, but in collaboration with the many partners that we were mentioning before. But that's opening the door to this kind of holy grail for the industry. Silico Clinical Trial. And keep in mind that the people were saying, like what has been presented at the European Parliament, that you can do in 2 weeks this kind of clinical trial in such a way that the FDA will accept this element and reduce the cost by at least $10 million, not mentioning the fact that you can bring the product to the market 2 years in advance. For that, you need to have access to all this environment. And that's why I want to recognize greatly this kind of platform that the CADFEM is developing, with the access to the computational power, the cloud, the access to the right geometry, material properties, and so on. And in such a way that we can promote that and post-process it in a way that the regulatory people will be accepting it. When we are moving further, and I certainly don't want to go into many detail over there because Michel Rochette will be discussing that, but clearly we need to bring that to the clinicians. The clinicians are people who are saving our lives, but sometimes they don't know, they are relying on their experience. They would very much value to get additional insight. Those are the insights that we can bring to them, provided that we are quick to do that, and provided that we are validated enough to do it. So definitely some area for the future. Well, if I'm moving a little bit away from the purely medical device area, although it will be coming later on, but let me take this example of a bioreactor. Bioreactor have been extremely important in order to produce a vaccine. But if the bioreactor is not working well, that means that you need to throw away the entire batch, wasting a lot of time because you need at least 3 weeks to come back to that. That was leading to a lot of problems about a year ago when people were trying to generate the vaccine. Now let's imagine that you've got a digital twin of your bioreactor. And that continuously you can modify what's going on and adjust it. That means that this is changing the life. You can make sure that the productivity is the very high level. And everybody will talk about AI. And I've got a meeting with the European Commission a couple of days ago, and everybody talked about AI. It's very important to find out what do we mean by AI? How can we take advantage of that? We can certainly expand the AI solution with all the synthetic data because we have some reliable model. It's a fantastic way to create a lot of big data, which are fully validated. Second element is that we can also take advantage of this in silico approach to test some new guidance, some new artificial intelligence, and to see whether this will be working well for the different patient, no matter the extreme case. And last point is that we can also, in silico, benefit from AI, in the sense that there are some element which is more data-driven because we don't have the physics-driven model right now. We can observe that like this kind of fantastic work done by Professor Paul Watton at Oxford and Sheffield for the growth of cerebral aneurysm. So that's how we can complete existing model with biological model coming from AI. And if we are putting all that together, that will lead us to this kind of a dream. So, okay, we can create this kind of personal digital avatar that will allow us to test all these kind of elements, but at the same time to make sure that each single patient will be getting the right treatment for himself. So Jan, I know that you are doing a lot of work, that you are already very ambitious and that your plate is full. But let me tell you that I will be challenging you because together, I think that with CADFEM Medical, we can go quickly toward this kind of personal digital avatar in the future. So in summary, as you can see, this is this kind of a long-term vision of Ansys, long-term structure and strategy that we are developing with different kind of level. I'm convinced that we can do that together. That's one of the key elements that we are promoting at the Avicina Alliance with Ansys, with other partners, with other competitors. We are also our partners in this area. The only point is that there is no excuse. We've got the toolbox right now. We need to go in this direction because altogether we are in a position to save the world and to save many people. So as the time is up, just want to summarize what we are saying and stress some very important points. Validation is extremely important, but you know for sure that this kind of model are physically and clinically validated. If possible, you need to do that systematically. Second, regulation. We can accelerate the regulatory approval process. People are accepting this kind of digital evidence. We need to keep pushing the regulator and the policymaker in different parts of the world, including in Europe, to make sure that this is becoming a reality, but we are on the good way to do that. The future is there. Everything will be in the cloud with this kind of personal digital avatar, allowing us to live longer, healthier in the future. That could be very ambitious, very intimidating, but I want to let you know, go in this direction. Don't be afraid. You will not be alone. Both at Ansys and as part of the Avicina Alliance, we'll be there to work with you. And with that, I want to just to wrap up my presentation by thanking again quite a lot CADFEM Medical and Jan Ertwig to give me the opportunity to paint this kind of vision that all the next speaker will be going into the detail. You've got my different kind of contact detail here, my different title. And I can stress that the title I'm the most proud of is the first one. I'm a very strong believer of the CADFEM Medical platform. So thank you very much for your attention. And back to you, Jan.